Welcome back, everyone, to a new story. We really hope you enjoy it. It started, as most of my days did, with the slow, grudging return of consciousness, a blurry awareness of the world filtering back in. But this time, something was wrong. The first clue was the pillow. My hair, usually short enough that I barely noticed it, was a heavy, silken weight spread across the fabric. I tried to push it away, and my own hand felt wrong, slender, smooth, with no familiar calluses on the palm. My eyes snapped open. The room was the same, our bedroom, with its soft gray walls and the big window letting in the pale morning light. Claudia's side of the bed was empty, which wasn't unusual. She was an early riser. But the feeling that something was fundamentally incorrect was a cold knot in my stomach. I sat up, and the sheet pooled around my waist, revealing a nightgown, a delicate, peach-colored silk nightgown with thin spaghetti straps. I never wore things like this. I slept in boxers and an old t-shirt. Panic began to bubble in my chest. I looked down at myself. My skin was smooth, almost glowing. My chest was not flat. Under the silk, there were two soft, full mounds rising and falling with my increasingly rapid breaths. My waist seemed to dip inward in a way it never had before, and my hips flared out gently. "No," I whispered, my voice a strange, higher pitch than I was used to. "No, no, no." I scrambled out of bed, nearly tripping over the hem of the nightgown. The floor felt cold against the bare soles of my feet, which looked smaller, more delicate. I stumbled into our attached bathroom, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I leaned over the sink, bracing my hands on the cool marble, and forced myself to look up at the mirror. The person staring back at me was a stranger. It was a woman. She was pretty, with a heart-shaped face I didn't recognize. Her hair was a cascade of dark brown waves tumbling over her shoulders. Her eyes were wide and brown, my eyes. I realized with a jolt, but they were framed by long, naturally curling lashes that made them look huge and expressive. Her lips were full and pink, her jawline soft, her neck long and graceful. It was like looking at a computer-generated image of what a female version of me might look like. It was flawless, and it was terrifying. I touched my face. The woman in the mirror touched hers. Her fingertips were soft, the nails neatly shaped. I ran a hand down my throat, feeling the smooth, unblemished skin where my Adam's apple should have been. A strangled sob escaped my lips. "What's happening?" I choked out, the sound of my new voice making it all the more real. "Good morning, Nikki." I spun around. Claudia was leaning against the doorframe, a mug of coffee in her hand and a playful, infuriatingly calm smile on her face. She was dressed in her usual morning attire of yoga pants and a tank top, looking completely at ease. "Claudia, what did you do?" I demanded, my voice cracking with panic. "What is this?" "This," she said, taking a slow sip of her coffee, "is your new reality, for a little while, at least." My mind was reeling, trying to piece together an explanation that made sense. A dream, a hallucination. "This isn't funny, Claudia. Is this some kind of prank? A drug?" "It's a little more advanced than that," she said, her smile widening. "Let's just call it a project I've been working on, a chemical compound, a bioenhancer. The specifics would bore you. The point is, it works." "Works?" It turned me into a woman. I gestured wildly at my new body, the silk of the nightgown swishing around my thighs. The sensation was distracting. It was soft, cool, and it slid against my skin in a way that was completely foreign. I was acutely aware of the new weight on my chest, a gentle, persistent pressure with every movement. It was a bizarre mix of terror and a deeply buried, shameful flicker of curiosity. "I know," she said, her eyes twinkling. "I also know you. Nick, I have seen the way you look at my clothes when you think I'm not paying attention, the way your eyes linger on the lingerie catalogs. You have a curiosity you've been pushing down your whole life. I just decided to help you explore it." I stared at her, speechless. She wasn't wrong. I'd always had this interest, a secret fascination with the fabrics, the shapes, the sheer artistry of women's clothing. I dismissed it as a weird quirk, something to be ignored and ashamed of. But for her to not only notice it, but to act on it in such a drastic, unbelievable way. "You can't just do this to a person," I finally managed to say, my voice trembling. "Oh, I can. And I did," she said, her tone softening slightly. She walked over and gently took my hand. Her touch was warm and familiar, a strange anchor in this sea of wrongness. Think of it as an experiment, a vacation from yourself, just for a little while. Who knows, you might even like it. She led me out of the bathroom and back into the bedroom. I felt dazed, my brain struggling to catch up with the physical reality. My own body felt like a costume I couldn't take off. The silk of the nightgown whispering against my legs with every step was a constant reminder. I was scared. I was angry. But underneath it all, a tiny, treacherous part of me was captivated by the sheer novelty of it all. Claudia didn't give me much time to dwell on my existential crisis. Her approach was practical, almost clinical, as if this was nothing more than a simple makeover project. She led me to my closet, the one that had always housed my collection of jeans, button-down shirts, and a few sad-looking suits. "First things first," she announced, pulling open the double doors. "You can't go around in your pajamas all day." My jaw dropped. Everything was gone. Every single piece of my old life, my comfortable, familiar, masculine life had vanished. The sturdy denim, the soft cotton of my t-shirts, the wool of my sweaters, all of it had been replaced. The closet was now a shrine to femininity. Dresses in every color and pattern imaginable hung in neat rows. Skirts of varying lengths, from prim and professional to short and flirty, were organized by style. There were crop tops, delicate blouses, and soft-looking sweaters, and on the shelves where my sneakers and dress shoes used to be, there was a daunting array of sandals, flats, and heels. But it was the drawers that truly made my stomach flip. Claudia pulled one open with a flourish. It was filled with lingerie, not just simple cotton underwear, but intricate creations of lace, silk, and satin in shades of black, red, cream, and pastel blue. "We need to start with the basics," she said, pulling out a lacy white bra and a matching pair of panties. She held them up for my inspection. They looked so small, so fragile. I can't wear that," I stammered, feeling a hot blush creep up my neck and spread across my new delicate face. "Of course you can," she said, her voice patient, like she was talking to a child. "It's what you're built for now. Come on, turn around." I felt like a puppet as I slowly turned my back to her. My mind was screaming in protest, but my body just obeyed. The old Nick, the one who made decisions and was in control, seemed to have been locked away somewhere deep inside, leaving this new, compliant creature in his place. "Okay, arms through the straps," she instructed. I did as I was told, feeling the thin, elastic straps slide over my shoulders. The fabric of the cups felt soft against my back. "Now, lean forward a little. I'll handle the hooks." I heard a series of tiny clicks as she fastened the clasp in the back. The band felt snug, a strange pressure circling my ribcage. "All right, now stand up straight and adjust. You just sort of scoop everything into the cups." My hands trembled as I reached up and touched my new breasts. They were soft, sensitive, and undeniably real, awkwardly. I followed her instructions, my cheeks burning with a mixture of shame and a weird, clinical fascination. The bra was surprisingly supportive, lifting and shaping me. "Perfect," Claudia said, walking around to face me. She surveyed her work with a satisfied nod, then she held up a pair of small crescent-shaped pads, and for a little extra oomph, she gently pushed the pads, which she called cutlets, into the sides of the bra cups. The effect was immediate. My chest looked even fuller, creating a dramatic curve that the thin silk of my nightgown did little to hide. I stared at my reflection in the full-length mirror on the closet door. The woman looking back at me had an hourglass figure. It was shocking. "See, a good foundation is everything," Claudia said cheerfully. Next came the panties, which felt impossibly flimsy and barely there. Then she picked out an outfit, a simple sundress with a blue floral pattern. It was made of a light, floaty material that felt like a whisper against my skin. The dress had a fitted bodice that hugged my new curves and a skirt that flared out to just above my knees. The feeling of air on my bare legs was a completely new sensation, both liberating and incredibly vulnerable. Finally, the shoes. She chose a pair of simple white sandals with a tiny, 1-inch heel and thin straps that buckled around the ankle. "We'll start you off easy," she said with a wink. Putting them on was an ordeal. I had to sit on the edge of the bed, fumbling with the tiny buckles. When I finally stood up, I felt like I was on stilts, My balance was completely off. I took a tentative step and wobbled precariously. "Point your toes. Walk heel to toe," Claudia coached from the doorway. "You'll get the hang of it." I took a few more clumsy steps, my ankles shaking. I felt ridiculous, a man playing a clumsy game of dress-up in a body that wasn't his. But when I caught sight of myself in the mirror again, the image was jarringly cohesive. The dress, the sandals, the long hair, the soft curves. It all worked together. I didn't look like a man in a dress. I looked like a woman, a very nervous, awkward woman, but a woman nonetheless. A war was raging inside me, part of me. The old Nick was horrified. He felt stripped of his identity, humiliated, trapped. He wanted to rip these clothes off, to demand his old body back, to scream until this nightmare ended. But another part of me, a quiet, curious voice I'd never allowed myself to hear before, was intrigued. The softness of the dress, the strange security of the bra, the way my reflection looked so completely, convincingly different. There was a thrill in it, a terrifying, exhilarating thrill that I was too ashamed to admit, even to myself. I was living out a fantasy I'd never even dared to fully form in my own mind, and I didn't know whether to fight it or surrender. "Our first outing is Nikki," Claudia announced, grabbing her car keys from the bowl by the door. "You need a proper introduction to the world of feminine upkeep." My heart leapt into my throat. "Outing, you mean outside in public?" "Of course," she said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "We're going to my salon. You're long overdue for a trim and a manicure." The 20-minute drive was torture. I sat rigidly in the passenger seat, convinced that every driver in every car we passed was staring at me. Somehow, knowing my secret, I was hyper-aware of everything, the way the seatbelt cut across my chest, the unfamiliar sensation of my thighs sticking slightly to the leather seat, the way my hair kept falling into my face. The salon was one of those high-end places Claudia frequented, all white walls, chrome fixtures, and the faint, pleasant smell of expensive hair products. As we walked in, a stylish woman with a sharp blonde bob looked up from the reception desk. "Claudia, darling, good to see you," she chirped. Then her eyes flicked to me, and her smile widened. "And who is this lovely friend of yours?" "This is Nikki," Claudia said smoothly, placing a hand on the small of my back. "She's new in town. I told her you guys were the best. We're hoping you can squeeze her in for the works." "For a friend of yours, absolutely." The receptionist, whose name tag read Sandra, said. She tapped a few things on her computer. "We can start you with a wash and cut with Marco, and then a manicure with Jenny. How does that sound, honey?" She was talking to me. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. My throat felt tight and dry. Claudia gave my back a reassuring squeeze. "It sounds perfect," she answered for me. I was led to a sleek black chair and draped in a cape. A young man named Marco with kind eyes and perfectly styled hair came over. "Hello, Nikki, I'm Marco. What are we thinking for your hair today?" Again, I was speechless. I had no idea what to say. I'd never had to think about my hair beyond asking for a number 2 on the sides and a little trim on top. Claudia stepped in again. "My savior and my tormentor. Just a little shaping," she told Marco. "Clean up the ends, maybe add some long, soft layers to give it some movement. And what do you think about a few subtle highlights? A little honey gold to catch the light." Marco's eyes lit up. "Oh, that would be gorgeous with your skin tone." And just like that, it was decided. I was led to the washing station and tilted back in the chair. The feeling of the warm water running through my long hair was surprisingly pleasant. But when Marco started to massage the shampoo into my scalp, I nearly melted. His fingers worked in firm, knowing circles, releasing a tension I didn't even know I was holding. A soft, involuntary sigh escaped my lips. This was a level of pampering, of pure sensory pleasure, that Nick would have scoffed at, but Nikki was finding it hard to resist. Back in the chair, Marco worked his magic. The snip of his scissors was a steady, rhythmic sound. We didn't talk much, which I was grateful for. Claudia sat in a chair nearby, flipping through a magazine, occasionally glancing up to give me an encouraging smile. After the cut, another stylist came over to apply the highlights, painting thin strands of my hair with a bleach that smelled sharp and chemical. While the color, Set. I was moved to the manicure station. A cheerful woman named Jenny took my hand. "What color are we feeling today, Nikki?" she asked, gesturing to a wall displaying hundreds of tiny bottles of nail polish. I stared at the overwhelming rainbow of options. I don't know. "How about a classic Claudia suggested from behind me? A deep burgundy. It's sophisticated." "Excellent choice," Jenny said. She went to work, filing my nails into a soft, rounded shape, pushing back my cuticles and massaging my hands with a scented lotion. My hands, which had always been purely functional tools, were being transformed into something elegant. The feeling of her painting the polish onto each nail was strange. A cool, wet slick followed by a second, thicker coat when she was done. She held my hand up for me to see. The nails were a glossy, wine red. Against my smooth skin, they looked impossibly feminine. My hands didn't look like my own anymore. They belonged to Nikki. Finally, it was time for the big reveal. Marco blew out my hair with a round brush, creating soft, bouncy waves. The highlights were subtle, just as Claudia had suggested, glinting like spun gold under the bright salon lights. He turned my chair to face the mirror. I gasped. The woman staring back at me was beautiful, truly, genuinely beautiful. Her hair framed her face perfectly. Her hands looked graceful and polished, and her eyes seemed to shine with a new light. For the first time, I didn't just see a stranger, I saw a complete person, a confident, attractive woman smiled hesitantly back at me. And in that moment, a dangerous thought surfaced, pushing its way through the layers of fear and confusion. It was quiet but clear, like a bell ringing in a silent room. Maybe I'm better at this than I thought. I was starting to see what Claudia saw. I wasn't just Nick in a different body. I was becoming someone new, and the scariest part, I was starting to enjoy it. Riding the high of my salon transformation, Claudia decided we weren't done. "Every woman needs her war paint," she declared, steering the car towards the largest shopping mall in the city. The makeup department of the big department store was an overwhelming assault on the senses. It was a brightly lit wonderland of glass counters, shimmering powders, and countless tubes of lipstick. The air was thick with a dozen competing perfumes. Women of all ages drifted from counter to counter, testing colors on the backs of their hands. I felt a fresh wave of anxiety. This was deep in enemy territory. Claudia, of course, was completely in her element. She navigated the bustling aisles with purpose, leading me straight to a counter for a brand with sleek, black packaging. A makeup artist with flawless skin and a dramatic cat eye looked up as we approached. "Can I help you, ladies?" she asked. "Yes," Claudia said, beaming. "My friend Nikki here needs a full face. She has a big event coming up and wants to find the perfect look. Something glamorous but still natural." The artist, whose name was Alicia, sat me down in a tall chair facing a mirror surrounded by Hollywood-style light bulbs. It felt like I was backstage at a theater. "All right, let's see what we're working with," Alicia said, studying my face with a professional, discerning eye. "You have great bone structure and amazing eyes. This will be fun." For the next 40 minutes, she worked on me like I was a canvas. She started with a cool, moisturizing primer, then buffed a liquid foundation onto my skin with a soft, dense brush. The feeling was bizarre, like my face was being gently erased and redrawn. She blended concealer under my eyes, dusted on a translucent powder that felt like silk, and then added a soft, rosy blush to the apples of my cheeks, instantly giving my face a healthy, vibrant glow. The eye makeup was the most intricate part. She used a palette of warm browns and shimmering golds to create a smoky effect that made my eyes look bigger and deeper. I was amazed at her precision as she drew a thin, sharp line of black liquid liner along my upper lash line, ending in a subtle wing. A few coats of mascara, and my lashes looked impossibly long and thick. "Now for the lips," she announced, holding up a tube of brilliant red lipstick. A classic red is a statement. It says you're confident and you're not afraid to be seen. She carefully painted the color onto my lips. The effect was transformative. The red was so bold, so unapologetically feminine, that it seemed to light up my entire face. I stared at my reflection, mesmerized. The woman in the mirror was a complete stranger now. She was polished, sophisticated, and undeniably alluring. "You look stunning," Claudia breathed, her eyes wide with admiration. "Now, there's just one more thing to complete the look," she said, a mischievous glint in her eye. She grabbed my hand and pulled me away from the makeup counter, leading me towards a small kiosk in the middle of the mall. "EAR piercing," the sign read. "Oh, no," I said, trying to pull my hand back. "No way." "Claudia, that's too much." "Nonsense," she insisted, her grip surprisingly strong. "Every girl needs a little sparkle. It's just a quick pinch." Before I could protest further, I was sitting in another chair, a friendly teenager swabbing my earlobes with alcohol. My heart was pounding. This felt so permanent, so real. A haircut grows out, makeup washes off, but this was different. This was a physical modification. Claudia picked out a pair of simple, glittering cubic zirconia studs. The teenager aimed a small, spring-loaded device, a piercing gun, at my earlobe. "Deep breath," she said. I flinched at the sharp click and the sudden hot sting in my ear. It was over in a second. She repeated the process on the other side. My ears throbbed with a dull ache. But when I looked in the small hand mirror she gave me, I was stunned. The tiny, sparkling studs caught the light, drawing attention to the graceful curve of my neck and jaw. They were the finishing touch, the final detail that cemented the illusion. I was Nikki, and Nikki had pierced ears. "Now for the fun part," Claudia said, her shopping appetite clearly not yet satisfied. "Let's find you something to wear with your new face." We spent the next 2 hours in a whirlwind of stores. Claudia had me trying on everything. A sleek black dress that clung to my body in all the right places. A fun, flirty skirt with a high waist that swirled around my knees when I twirled. She even insisted I try on a set of black lace lingerie in the dressing room, just to see how it feels under clothes. I stood in the cramped, brightly lit dressing room, wearing nothing but the delicate bra and panty set. The black lace was a stark contrast against my pale skin. The bra pushed my breasts up, creating an impressive cleavage that I found myself staring at with a kind of detached wonder. It was embarrassing, but a part of me, a part that was growing bolder by the minute, was also surprised. I was surprised that I liked it. I liked the way the lace felt, the way the dress hugged my new hips, the way the earrings sparkled when I turned my head. The reflection in the mirror was becoming less of a stranger and more of an aspiration. We were in a boutique on the second floor, the kind of place with floaty dresses and price tags that made my eyes water. Claudia was holding up a royal blue cocktail dress against me, judging the color, when a familiar voice cut through the air. "Claudia, I thought that was you." We both turned. Standing there was Mike, one of Claudia's biggest clients. He was a handsome guy in his late 30s, always impeccably dressed, with a charming, easy smile. He ran a successful tech startup, and Claudia's marketing firm handled his account. I'd met him a few times at company events. We'd shaken hands, talked about sports, the usual guy stuff. His eyes met mine for a fraction of a second, and I felt a jolt of pure, cold panic. He was going to recognize me. This whole charade was about to come crashing down in the middle of a women's clothing store. My face would be all over the internet. My life would be over. But his eyes didn't hold any flicker of recognition. Instead, they widened slightly, and his smile became a little more focused, a little more appreciative. He looked at me not as Nick, the guy he knew from work, but as a woman he'd never seen before, a woman he clearly found attractive. "Mike," Claudia said, recovering instantly. "What are you doing here? I didn't take you for a man who enjoys dress shopping." "Picking up a birthday gift for my sister," he said, his gaze drifting back to me. He gave me a polite, almost bashful smile. "I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to say hello." "Not at all," Claudia said, and I could practically feel the gears turning in her head. "Mike, I'd like you to meet my friend, Nikki. She's visiting for a while." "Nikki," he repeated, extending his hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you." My hand felt small and delicate in his as I shook it. His grip was firm and warm. "You too," I managed to squeak out, my voice barely a whisper. My heart was thumping a frantic rhythm against my ribs. This was a completely new experience. As Nick, I was used to sizing up other men, engaging in a bit of friendly competition. I had never, ever been on the receiving end of a man's appreciative gaze. It was unnerving and, to my absolute horror, a little bit thrilling. I felt a blush spreading across my cheeks. The same blush I'd seen on countless women when a handsome man paid them a compliment. "That color is perfect on you. By the way," Mike said, nodding toward the blue dress Claudia was still holding, "it really brings out your eyes." "Thank you," I mumbled, looking down at my sandaled feet. "Are you, new to the city?" "Nikki?" he asked, his tone hopeful. Claudia jumped in before I had to formulate a lie. "She's just here for a few weeks, but I'm showing her all the best spots." "Well, in that case," Mike said, his confidence growing, "I'm co-chairing a charity gala in a couple of weeks. I know it's forward of me, but I was wondering if you might like to come as my guest." "Of course." I stared at him, my mind completely blank. A gala with him as his date, the idea was so preposterous, so far outside the realm of possibility that I couldn't even process it. But Claudia, my puppet master, had no such hesitation. She beamed at him. "She would love that. Wouldn't you, Nikki?" She gave me a tiny, almost imperceptible nudge. I could only nod numbly, like one of those bobblehead dolls. "Great," Mike's face lit up. "That's great. Can I maybe get your number? I can text you the details." Again, Claudia stepped in, smoothly rattling off a phone number, my phone number. It took me a second to even realize it was my own. After a few more pleasantries, Mike said his goodbyes and walked away, turning back once to give me another charming smile. The second he was out of earshot, I turned on Claudia, my voice a furious hiss. "Are you insane? A gala? A date with Mike? He's your client. He knows me." "He knows Nick," she corrected me, a triumphant smirk on her face. "He has absolutely no idea who Nikki is. And did you see the way he looked at you?" He was completely smitten. "This isn't a game, Claudia." "Isn't it?" she replied, her eyes sparkling with amusement. "It's the ultimate test. You just got hit on by a successful, handsome man who had no idea you were anyone but the beautiful woman standing in front of him. You passed with flying colors. You should be proud." I wasn't proud. I was terrified. I was confused. A man had just asked me out, and a small, treacherous part of me, the part that was starting to get comfortable being Nikki, felt a strange, dizzying flutter of validation. It was the most messed up feeling I'd ever had. That evening, after we got home with an obscene number of shopping bags, I thought I might finally get a moment to process the day's insanity. I was wrong. After we put everything away, Claudia disappeared into the spare room for a few minutes. When she returned, she was holding something that made my blood run cold. It was a cheerleader uniform. And it wasn't just any cheerleader uniform. It was tiny. A short, pleated red and white skirt that looked like it would barely cover anything. A matching crop top with tigers written across the chest in bold letters. A pair of white thigh-high socks with red stripes at the top, and to complete the ensemble, a set of red pom-poms. "What?" I said flatly. "Is that—" "This," she announced with a theatrical flourish, "is for tonight's entertainment." She also held up a wig, too long, blonde pigtails tied with red ribbons. I backed away slowly. "No, absolutely not. I draw the line at costumes." "It's not a costume. It's an outfit," she countered, tossing it onto the bed. "I've just always had this little fantasy, and now I have the perfect person to help me act it out." "I'm not your dress-up doll, Claudia," I said, my voice rising. After the day I'd had the salon, the makeup, the ear piercing, Mike, this felt like a step too far. It felt like she was making a mockery of the whole thing, turning this already bizarre experience into a complete farce. "Oh, come on, Nikki," she coaxed, her voice soft and persuasive. "Don't be a spoil sport, just for a little while. For me." I wanted to say no. I really, truly wanted to put my foot down and refuse. But the fight was draining out of me. The lines between what I wanted and what she wanted were blurring, and honestly, a part of me was morbidly curious to see what I would look like in such a ridiculously feminine outfit. With a heavy, resigned sigh, I took the uniform into the bathroom to change. The fabric was cheap and synthetic. The top was so tight it felt like a second skin, pushing my breasts up and exposing a sliver of my midriff. The skirt was even worse. It was scandalously short, swishing around the very tops of my thighs. The thigh-high socks were surprisingly comfortable, but they only served to emphasize the length of my bare legs. Finally, I put on the wig, settling the blonde pigtails on either side of my head. I looked at myself in the mirror and felt a wave of dizzying cognitive dissonance. The reflection was absurd. I looked like a character from a movie, an over-the-top caricature of a cute, peppy teenager. I looked adorable and incredibly sexy. The combination was potent and deeply unsettling. I took a deep breath and walked back into the bedroom. Claudia's reaction was immediate. Her eyes went wide, and a low whistle escaped her lips. "Wow," she said, her voice a little husky. "Just wow. I knew it would look good, but I had no idea." She walked a slow circle around me, her eyes taking in every detail. I felt my skin heat up under her intense scrutiny, a blush rising from my chest to my hairline. I felt exposed, vulnerable, and yet there was a strange power in it too, in commanding that kind of reaction from her. "Give me a little twirl," she prompted. Hesitantly, I spun around. The short, pleated skirt flared out, giving her a brief glimpse of the white panties I wore underneath. "Perfect," she murmured. She had me pose with the pom-poms, first holding them up in a classic cheer pose, then resting them on my hips. She laughed and clapped, treating it like a private fashion show. Just when I thought the humiliation was over, she came up behind me, wrapping her arms around my waist. She rested her chin on my shoulder, our eyes meeting in the mirror. I could feel the warmth of her body pressed against my back. "You know," she whispered, her breath warm against my ear, sending a shiver down my spine. "You're really, truly hotter than you think you are." Nikki. My heart did a frantic little flip-flop in my chest. I stared at our reflection, at her, looking strong and confident, and at me, dressed in this ridiculous, revealing outfit, looking flustered and pretty. Her embrace was possessive, proprietorial. She had created this version of me, and she was clearly enjoying her handiwork. I didn't know what to do. My mind was a jumble of conflicting emotions. I should have been angry. I should have pushed her away, but I was frozen, trapped between the lingering resentment of Nick and the blossoming, confusing feelings of Nikki, who found herself craving the very attention she was so terrified of. In that moment, I didn't know whether to run or to lean back into her embrace and let myself be consumed by this new role completely. The next morning, I woke up with a sliver of hope. Maybe it was all a dream, a very, very long and detailed dream. Maybe the effects had worn off overnight, and I would look in the mirror and see my old, familiar, male face staring back at me. I crept into the bathroom, my heart full of a desperate, prayerful optimism. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and then looked. Nikki stared back. Her hair was a messy tangle around her face. Her eyes were still a little sleepy, and her lips were pale without lipstick. But she was undeniably still there, still me. A wave of disappointment, so sharp it surprised me, washed over me. It was quickly followed by a sense of weary resignation. This was my reality now, at least for the foreseeable future. When I walked back into the bedroom, Claudia was awake, sipping coffee and scrolling through her phone. She looked up and gave me a lazy smile. "Good morning. Beautiful," she said. "I was wondering when you'd be up." "It didn't wear off," I stated flatly, sitting on the edge of the bed. Oh, the formula." She took another sip of coffee, unconcerned. "No, it looks like the half-life is a little longer than I initially calculated. It could be weeks, maybe longer. Who knows?" She shrugged. "Oh well, might as well enjoy it and get you a proper wardrobe." And so began day 2 of my life as Nikki. If the first day was about a forced, shocking transformation, the second day was about tool construction. We were actively building a life for this new person. After a quick breakfast, Claudia announced another shopping spree. "Yesterday was for basics and a little fun," she said, grabbing her purse. "Today is for investment pieces. We need to build a wardrobe for every possible occasion." This time, the experience was different. My initial terror had subsided into a kind of nervous acceptance. Walking through the mall, I felt less like an imposter and more like, well, a woman going shopping. I was starting to get the hang of my slightly wobbly walk in flat sandals. I found myself automatically brushing my long hair out of my face. The changes were becoming second nature. Our first stop was a high-end lingerie store, a place filled with silk, lace, and an air of quiet luxury. I blushed as the saleswoman measured me for a bra, her tape measure cool against my skin. But I didn't protest. I was starting to understand what Claudia meant about a good foundation. The real trial came when Claudia decided I needed a corset. She led me to a specialized boutique that smelled of leather and perfume. A corset, I whispered. Looking at the intimidating garments hanging on the walls, they looked like medieval torture devices. Every woman should experience the power of a corset at least once, Claudia said with authority. It completely changes your posture, your shape, everything. A stern-looking woman with her hair in a tight bun helped us. She laced me into a black satin corset that hooked in the front and tightened in the back. As she pulled the laces, I felt an incredible pressure around my midsection. It wasn't painful, exactly, but it was intensely constricting. I couldn't slouch. I had to stand up perfectly straight, my shoulders back. It pushed my breasts up, creating an even more dramatic silhouette, and whittled my waist down to an almost impossibly small size. I looked at myself in the three-way mirror. The effect was breathtaking. I looked like a Victorian lady, all curves and tiny waist. The feeling of being so tightly cinched was bizarrely appealing. It was restrictive, yes, but it also made me feel secure, held together, and powerful in a way I couldn't quite explain. We bought the corset, along with a variety of stockings and garter belts to wear with it. We bought an elegant evening gown for the gala with Mike, a shimmering silver number that made me feel like a movie star. We bought professional-looking blouses and pencil skirts, casual jeans that hugged my new curves, and a daunting pair of 3-inch black heels. Back home, surrounded by bags, I found myself doing something I wouldn't have thought possible 48 hours ago. I was actively participating. As we put the new clothes away, I started asking questions. "So, what kind of makeup would you wear with this dress?" I asked, holding up a green cocktail dress. A soft, smoky eye with a nude lip. Claudia answered without hesitation. Later, I slipped on the new black heels and teetered around the living room. "How do you walk in these without breaking your neck?" Claudia laughed and spent the next half hour coaching me, showing me how to shift my weight, keep my steps small, and walk with a confidence I definitely didn't feel. My internal landscape was shifting. The angry, terrified Nick was still in there, but his voice was getting quieter. Nicky's voice, full of curiosity and a surprising eagerness to learn, was getting louder. I was no longer just a passive victim of Claudia's experiment. I was becoming an active student in the art of being a woman, and to my own astonishment, I was starting to feel like I might actually be good at it. That night, after Claudia had gone to bed, I found myself drawn back to the bathroom. The vanity was covered in the new makeup we'd bought. It was an arsenal of powders, creams, and colors, all promising transformation. I sat down, the bright lights of the vanity mirror illuminating my face. For the first time, I was completely alone with Nikki. There was no Claudia to guide me, no makeup artist to do the work for me. It was just me and this new reflection. Hesitantly, I picked up the foundation and a sponge. I remembered watching Alicia, the way she had dotted it on my forehead, cheeks, nose, and chin before blending it outwards. My first attempt was clumsy. I used too much, and it looked cakey. I wiped it off with a makeup remover wipe and tried again. This time, I used less, blending carefully until my skin looked smooth and even. I moved on to the eyes, trying to replicate the smoky look. My hand was unsteady with the eyeliner, and the first line was a jagged mess. I wiped it away, my frustration mounting. This was so much harder than it looked, but I didn't give up. I tried again, bracing my elbow on the counter, drawing a slow, steady line. It wasn't perfect, but it was better. I smudged some dark shadow along the line, added a touch of mascara, and stood back. My eyes looked defined, mysterious. Finally, the lipstick. I chose the bold red from the day before. I carefully outlined my lips and then filled them in, the creamy texture cool and smooth. I stared at the finished product. It wasn't as polished as Alicia's work, but it was me. I had done it. I had transformed myself. I had taken this strange new face and made it beautiful. All on my own. A slow smile spread across my red lips. I went back into the bedroom and slid one of my new nightgowns on a deep blue satin chemise that felt like liquid silk against my skin. I stood in front of the full-length mirror, just looking. The woman in the mirror looked confident, alluring. She looked complete. "You're still awake." I turned to see Claudia sitting up in bed, watching me with a soft, sleepy expression. I walked over and sat on the edge of the bed, my satin-clad legs tucked underneath me. For a long moment, I was silent, gathering my thoughts. I needed to tell her. I needed to confess what was happening inside my head. "You know," I began, my voice quiet in the dim room. "When I first woke up like this, I was terrified. I felt like you had stolen something from me, like you had violated me in the most fundamental way possible. I felt trapped." She listened, her expression unreadable. "And I was so angry." I continued, tracing a pattern on the silk comforter. "I felt like this was all a game to you, like I was your little project to amuse yourself with." "It was never just a game, Nick," she said softly. "I know that now," I said, finally looking up to meet her eyes, "because something has changed all day today, while we were shopping, and just now, putting on this makeup. I wasn't just going through the motions, I was enjoying it. I liked learning how to walk in heels. I liked picking out dresses. I searched for the right word. I felt free." A single tear escaped my eye and traced a path through my carefully applied foundation. It's crazy, isn't it, as Nick? I always felt like I had to be a certain way. Strong, in control, unemotional. There were all these invisible rules. But as Nikki, I can be soft. I can enjoy being pampered. I can take pleasure in just looking beautiful. It's like a part of me that I kept locked up my whole life has finally been let out. Claudia reached out and gently wiped the tear from my cheek with her thumb. She leaned in and gave me a soft, lingering kiss. It wasn't a kiss of passion, but one of deep, profound understanding. "I told you I knew you," she whispered against my lips. "It doesn't matter if you're Nick or Nikki. You're still the person I fell in love with. And maybe Nikki is just a part of you that you were never allowed to meet before." In that moment, all the anger and resentment I had been holding onto simply dissolved, replaced by a wave of gratitude and a love for her that felt deeper than ever before. She hadn't trapped me. She had, in the strangest way imaginable, set me free. The next few days passed in a blissful, strange haze of domesticity and discovery. I learned how to style my hair in different ways, from a sleek ponytail to soft, romantic waves. I practiced my makeup until I could do a full face in under 20 minutes. I became surprisingly adept at walking in heels, the click-clack of them on our hardwood floors becoming a familiar soundtrack in the apartment. Claudia and I settled into a new kind of rhythm. We'd cook dinner together, me carefully avoiding splashing anything on my nice clothes. We'd watch movies on the couch, my head resting on her shoulder, my newly manicured nails tracing patterns on her arm. Our relationship had shifted, becoming more tender, more playful. She loved this new version of me, and I was learning to love myself as Nikki, too. The gala was still a week away, a distant event on the horizon that I tried not to think about too much. It felt like the final exam for a class I never signed up for, the ultimate test of whether I could truly pull this off in the real world, under the scrutiny of hundreds of people. One evening, I was sitting on the sofa scrolling through my phone. It was still a bit jarring to see my old name, Nick, on all my social media profiles, which I had been studiously ignoring. I was checking my emails when a text message notification popped up on the screen. It was from an unknown number. My finger hovered over the notification, and a familiar flutter of anxiety stirred in my stomach. I tapped it open. The message was short, simple, and it made my heart stop for a second. "Hi, Nikki. It's Mike. From the store the other day. Hope you don't mind me texting. Just wanted to say I'm still really looking forward to the gala with you. Hope to see you there." I stared at the screen, the words blurring together. Mike, the handsome, charming man who had no idea who I really was. The man who saw me as a beautiful woman and wanted to take me on a date. My breath caught in my throat. This made it real. It wasn't just an abstract idea anymore. It was a concrete plan. A message on my phone from a man who was expecting to see me, to spend an evening with me. The fear was immense, a cold dread that washed over me. What if I said the wrong thing? What if he touched my hand and thought it felt too large? What if he somehow, miraculously, saw through the disguise and recognized the man underneath? But underneath the fear, there was something else, a spark of excitement, a thrill. The thought of putting on that shimmering silver gown, of having my hair and makeup done perfectly, of walking into a grand ballroom on the arm of a handsome man. It was a fantasy I would never have even dared to imagine. It was terrifying. Yes, but it was also undeniably, intoxicatingly alluring. "What is it?" Claudia asked, noticing the look on my face. I showed her the phone. She read the message, and a slow, mysterious smile spread across her face. It was the same smile she'd had on that first morning when she revealed what she had done to me. The smile of someone who knew exactly what was going to happen next. She looked from the phone to me, her eyes glinting with a familiar, mischievous light. "Well," she said, her voice a low, playful purr, "it seems you have a date. Maybe you should try it. You know, going to the party as a real lady." I looked down at the phone, at Mike's name on the screen. I looked at my reflection in the dark screen, the long hair, the soft features, the woman staring back at me. A real lady. The idea was both the most frightening and the most exciting thing I had ever heard. And as my heart hammered in my chest, a mix of sheer terror and wild anticipation, I knew, with a certainty that shook me to my core, that I was going to do it. I was going to the gala.